Comrades, welcome to the prologue of the most intense epic in human history. Close your eyes and imagine this with Brother Tong. You are standing in the middle of the desolate steppe in the 12th century. The freezing wind pierces right through to your bones. The stench of blood mixed with horse sweat hits your nose. There is no law here, no courts of justice, only the law of the mob and the edge of the blade. The weak become prey, the strong survive. This is the world that forged the conqueror known as Genghis Khan. But before the land was set ablaze, the beginning came from a raid, comrades. Back then, the Mongol lands were fractured into various factions, slaughtering each other day in and day out. Yesugei, the father of Genghis Khan, was the chieftain of the Tayichiud clan. One day, he was riding out to hunt along the Hoelun River, but his eyes didn't catch a deer or a wolf. He stumbled upon the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Her name was Hoelun. A newlywed bride sitting in a carriage with her husband, Chieftain of the Merkit tribe. On the Mongolian steppe of that era, snatching a woman wasn't romantic. It was a display of power. Yesugei didn't hesitate. He immediately rode back to gather his brothers to ambush the carriage. Chieftain realized he was outmatched, so Hoelun sacrificed herself, urging her husband to flee for his life. Chieftain rode away with tears and a vengeance that pierced deep to the bone. Comrades, this raid wasn't just about stealing a bride, but it ignited a blood war that would see brutal retaliation for decades to come. Later, Hoelun became pregnant. Meanwhile, Yesugei led his troops into battle against their arch-enemies, the Tatars. He successfully defeated the Tatar chieftain named Temujin, and the very second Yesugei rode back to his yurt with victory, the loud cry of a baby echoed out. Hoelun had given birth to a baby boy. But what left everyone in the yurt stunned in breathless shock wasn't his booming cry. It was the child's right hand. The little infant's fist was tightly clenched, and when he opened his hand, resting in that tiny palm was a blood clot the size of a knuckle bone, gripped tightly. According to ancient Mongol beliefs, this was no coincidence, but an omen from the heavens. A child born with a blood clot in his hand is a warrior destined to hold the fate of the land. Seeing this, Yesugei took the name of the enemy he had just killed to name his son, claiming the victory. Temujin, meaning the blacksmith, strong as steel. Temujin was born with a victory, born with the mark of a conqueror. But comrades, little did Yesugei know that his actions, both stealing another man's wife and naming his son after an enemy, wouldn't only bring greatness, but they painted a massive bullseye right on Temujin's back from the moment he opened his eyes to the world. The vengeance of the Merkit tribe was boiling over. The malice of the Tartars was waiting for payback, and the greatest catastrophe was about to crash into this family very soon. Just how brutal was the hell on earth that Temujin had to face in his childhood? Comrades, imagine a 9-year-old child in today's era. What are they doing? Playing around? Watching cartoons? But for a 9-year-old Temujin on the Mongolian steppe, life was purely about survival. There were no playgrounds here, only blizzards blowing with bone-shattering speed. Mongol children had to master horseback riding before they could even walk properly, and fully draw a bow before they knew how to write their own names. Temujin was forged by the ruthlessness of nature and tribal mob rule. But the turning point that dragged his life down into the abyss began on his 9th birthday, comrades. His father, Yesugei, decided that it was time for his beloved son to have a fiancée. Following ancient traditions, Yesugei took Temujin on horseback, braving the freezing wind toward the territory of the Ongrat tribe, the tribe of his mother, Hoelun. This tribe was renowned for having the most beautiful women on the steppe. This journey wasn't just about finding a wife, comrades. It was diplomacy to forge a political alliance. Along the way, they happened to meet a wise elder of the Ongerat tribe named Dai Sechen. Dai Sechen looked deep into the eyes of 9-year-old Temujin and spoke a sentence engraved in history. He told Yesugei, "Last night I dreamed of a white falcon swooping down to perch on my hand. In its talons, it tightly grasped the sun and the moon." Comrades, the white falcon was the symbol of the Kiad clan. Dai Sechen instantly knew this was no ordinary child, but a majestic falcon destined to turn heaven and earth upside down. He didn't hesitate to betroth his beloved 10-year-old daughter, Borte, to Temujin immediately. According to Mongol custom, Temujin had to stay and serve his future father-in-law for several years to prove his worth. Yesugei left his son there, patting Temujin's head one last time, completely unaware that this would be the final touch the father and son would ever share. Riding back to the tribe alone, Yesugei was starving and exhausted. In the middle of the desolate steppe, he saw smoke rising from the yurts of nomadic travelers. The smell of roasted meat hit his nose. The iron law of the steppe clearly states, "A hungry traveler has the right to share food and drink in any yurt, and the host cannot refuse." So Yesugei dismounted and joined the circle immediately. But tragically, hell had sent him to the wrong yurt. Because they were the Tatar tribe, the sworn enemies whose leader Yesugei had killed 9 years ago. The Tartars remembered Yesugei's face perfectly. The hatred that had been simmering for nearly a decade erupted. But they were cunning. They didn't draw their swords and dishonor themselves as hosts. They pretended to smile and welcomed him warmly, before secretly slipping poison into his food and fermented mare's milk, handing it to Yesugei to consume. Yesugei swallowed the deadly poison without realizing it. Not long after riding away, the poison took effect. It felt like hellfire burning his internal organs. The great warlord's body began to break down, blood spewing from his mouth. But with the instinct of a father and a leader, Yesugei gritted his teeth, riding through agonizing pain, enduring the torment on horseback for 3 days and 3 nights, until he crawled his way back to his own camp. With his dying breath, he ordered his trusted confidant, Munlik, to rush and bring Temujin back, before the eyes of the Kiad lion widened and he died a miserable death. Comrades, the pillar of the family had collapsed. 9-year-old Temujin became an orphan overnight, and worse yet, the relatives in the clan who used to bow to his father were now glaring at Temujin's family with the eyes of starving wolves. What were they going to do with this widow and her orphaned children? True hell had only just thrown its doors wide open. Comrades, the moment Munlik rode back into camp with Temujin, what awaited him was not his father's smile, but the lifeless body of the great warlord Yesugei. The entire world of the 9-year-old boy shattered before his eyes. From the son of a great chieftain, the future leader of the steppe, today he was reduced to a worthless orphan that no one wanted. And comrades, on the Mongolian steppe, the death of a leader doesn't mean mourning. It means a power struggle. The relatives of the Tayichiud clan, who once bowed their heads to his father, instantly revealed their wolf-like instincts. They looked at Hoelun and her children and thought, why should we waste precious supplies feeding this useless widow and her orphans? The historical breaking point occurred during the ancestral spirit offering ceremony, comrades. By tradition, the wife of the former leader, Hoelun, was entitled to a share of the meat from the offering. But the senior widows of the tribe, Orbe and Sukhothai, deliberately bypassed Hoelun. They didn't give her a single scrap of meat. Comrades, this wasn't just about hoarding food. It was a loud declaration to everyone in the tribe that this family has been cut off. They are no longer our people. The next morning, hell unleashed. The entire Tayichiud clan began packing up their yurts, tying their belongings onto horses and wagons. They were migrating and leaving Hoelun and her children behind. Imagine this with Brother Tong. Hoelun, the Iron Woman of the Mongols, refused to surrender to fate. She grabbed the tug, the tribal spirit banner that symbolized Yesugei's authority, leaped onto a horse, and rode out to block the migrating caravan. She screamed through tears and sheer rage, demanding their loyalty, demanding the honor they owed her husband. Her words were so powerful that some tribesmen hesitated in shame and turned back. But pity couldn't conquer hunger and fear, comrades. Ultimately, the new leader of the Tayichiud, Targutai, ordered the caravan to press forward. The dust from thousands of hooves choked the air, perfectly abandoning Temujin's family in the middle of the desolate, freezing steppe. From nobility, they became outcasts. Hoelun had to raise 7 lives with her bare hands. They had to migrate and hide in the harsh Khentii Mountains. No weapons, no horses, no supplies. They survived by digging up roots, gathering wild berries, and foraging for wild onions. Temujin and his brothers had to sharpen wooden sticks to spear tiny fish in the Onon River. Some days they even hunted mice or marmots just to stave off starvation. Comrades! They miraculously survived, but the most dangerous enemy wasn't outside the yurt. Extreme starvation and pressure began to eat away at the family's sanity. Bekter, the older and stronger half-brother, began throwing his weight around, shamelessly snatching the food that Temujin managed to find. A silent but explosive tension was brewing between the brothers. How would Temujin, who had constantly endured this oppression, handle the problem? Would blood of the same lineage have to spill on the grass? Brother Tong will take you to witness the childhood brutality of the man who would become Genghis Khan. Comrades, starvation can turn a man into a demon, and in a lawless land, the weak are the prey of the strong. One day, Temujin and his blood brother Khazar managed to catch some small fish in the Onon River and shoot a skylark. It was a crucial meal to sustain them and their mother. But their pride crumbled in an instant when Bekter, their larger and older half-brother, walked up and blatantly snatched the fish and the bird right out of their hands. Temujin clenched his fists. He and Khazar ran to complain to their mother Hoelun, but instead of taking their side, Hoelun scolded them back. She yelled, "Why are you fighting each other? Right now we have no true friends except our own shadows. Our real enemies are the Tayichiuds who abandoned us." Comrades, their mother's teachings were absolutely right, but they didn't apply to the heart of a growing wolf. To Temujin, submitting to oppression was the beginning of death. If he couldn't protect his own food from someone inside his house, how could he protect his family from enemies outside? Temujin looked into Khazar's eyes, and they signaled death to each other. Wasting no time, they grabbed their bows and sneaked out to find Bekter, who was sitting on a hill. Temujin crept up to block him from the front, while Khazar, the most precise archer in the family, circled around to cut off his escape route from behind. They drew their bowstrings to the max, aiming right at their own half-brother. Bekter turned to see the arrowheads pointed at his face. He knew his fate instantly. The young man didn't kneel or beg for his life, but he spoke his final words, which were etched into history. "You can destroy me, but do not kill Belgute. Let him live to tend the hearth of our family." The moment he finished, thwip, thwip, the arrows tore through the air, piercing Bekter's body with deadly accuracy. Their brother's body collapsed, dead on the spot. Blood of the same lineage soaked the Mongolian soil. Temujin and Kassar walked back to the yurt, but before they could even open their mouths, Hoelun looked into their eyes and instantly knew what had happened. The Iron Mother of the Steppe erupted in sheer fury. She cursed her own sons with the most brutal words. "You murderers! You were born clutching a blood clot. Now you act like wolves tearing into your prey, like a rabid panther devouring its own family." "Comrades." Temujin bowed his head and took the scolding. He might have eliminated the thorn in his side, but the ruthless act of murdering his own brother echoed much further than he thought. The news reached the ears of Targutai, the Tayichiud leader who had abandoned them. Targutai immediately broke a sweat. He realized that the tiger cub he left in the forest had now tasted blood and was growing into the deadliest of wolves. Targutai ordered a mobilization. A fully armed cavalry charged toward the Khentii Mountains. They had only one goal: capture Temujin alive and erase him from the face of history. How could young Temujin, without even a single horse, escape the hunt of a death squad army? The next circle of hell is galloping straight for him. "Comrades!" The thunderous roar of hundreds of horseshoes shattered the silence of the Khentii Mountains. The Tayichiud cavalry, led by Targutai, smashed right up to the front of Hoelun's yurt. They shouted across the steppe, "We are only here for Temujin. The rest of you stay out of it." Comrades, this was the ultimate crisis. Hoelun quickly took her other children and fled into hiding, while Temujin, he knew he was the target. The boy had no other choice but to sprint for his life, plunging into the dense forests of the sacred mountain, Burkhan Khaldun. Targutai ordered his cavalry to spread out and blockade every single route at the base of the mountain. Not even an ant was allowed to slip out. Targutai fiercely declared, "He ran deep into the forest. If we can't track him, we don't need to. Keep him surrounded until hunger squeezes him into crawling out to beg for his life." Comrades, just imagine a boy, barely in his teens, forced to hide in a deep forest entirely alone. No food, no water, no winter clothes, only terror and the howling of wolves in the night. Temujin endured agonizing starvation on that mountain for 9 full days and nights. His body wasted away until he was nothing but skin and bones, his strength fading until he could barely stand. Finally, his survival instincts succumbed to starvation. Temujin desperately dragged himself down the mountain to find a way out, but his exhausted body failed him. The moment he stepped out of the tree line, the ambushing Tayichiud soldiers pounced on him immediately. Temujin was bound and dragged, thrown right at Targutai's feet. The Tayichiud leader looked down at the former heir with eyes full of disgust. He didn't order Temujin's immediate execution, comrades, because spilling noble blood on the earth was considered a terrible omen. But what he did was crueler than death. Targutai ordered a cangue, a thick, heavy wooden board, to be locked around Temujin's neck and wrists. Comrades, this was the most barbaric torture device. The heavy wooden yoke locked his neck so tightly that the wearer couldn't even raise a hand to feed himself or swat a fly away from his own face. Temujin was stripped of his human dignity. He was paraded around on a leash through the yurts of the camp like a mangy dog. Allowing the Tayichiud people to take turns insulting, mocking, and spitting on him. Comrades, from the boy born with a blood clot, destined to be a conqueror. Today, he had become a lowly prisoner, waiting to die a slow death in a wooden yoke. But hell wasn't over yet. One night, while the Tayichiuds were throwing a feast and the entire camp was drunk, a split-second golden opportunity appeared. Temujin, despite wearing the massive wooden yoke, used his last surge of strength. He smashed the wooden board into the guard's head, knocking him out, and dashed off into the darkness. The camp's alarm bells blared. The entire Tayichiud warrior army woke up and mounted their horses to hunt him down instantly. The boy, with his neck locked in a wooden board, ran blindly and hid himself in a freezing river, submerging his body completely and leaving only his nose above the water to breathe. Enemy soldiers patrolled just inches away from his face. How will Temujin survive this heart-pounding manhunt? Who is the one that will reach out to pull him back from the jaws of death just inches away? This intense prologue has only just begun, comrades. Join the thrill of this hellish escape in Genghis Khan, Prologue, EP2.